Sergio is in serious trouble, as his sponsors are looking elsewhere. Max Verstappen has been urged to act like a world champion, and Lando Norris has been advised to crash into Verstappen. Do consider subscribing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Lewis Hamilton is poised to drive Ayrton Senna's title-winning 1990 McLaren F1 car at this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix in a tribute to the late three-time world champion. The F1 2024 season marks 30 years since Senna was killed in an accident during the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, in one of the most seismic moments in the sport's history. A number of tributes have been paid to Senna by the F1 community across this year, with four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel driving Senna's 1993 McLaren, a car personally owned by the German, when F1 visited Imola for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in May. That came after Vettel led a track run at Imola on the eve of the race weekend, with the F1 2024 drivers encouraged to wear Senna-themed t-shirts and balaclavas underneath their race helmets for the occasion. McLaren also paid tribute to Senna at the Monaco Grand Prix, an event won by the Brazilian legend on no fewer than 6 occasions, by running a one-off yellow, green, and blue livery inspired by Senna's helmet design at the Principality. A report by Brazil-based outlet Band has revealed that Hamilton is set to become the latest leading F1 figure to pay tribute to Senna this weekend, with plans in place for the Mercedes driver to perform a demonstration run behind the wheel of a McLaren MP4 Tor5B at Interlagos. The Senna Sempre, Senna Always event is scheduled to take place on Saturday at 1700 local time after all formal on-track activities for the day, including the F1 sprint race and main qualifying session, are over. Hamilton has made no secret of his admiration for Senna since making his F1 debut with McLaren at the start of the 2007 season. The 7-time world champion, a winner at Interlagos on 3 previous occasions in 2016, 2018, and 2021, was made an honorary citizen of Brazil ahead of the 2022 race in Sao Paulo. Hamilton was also presented with a race-worn Senna helmet after equaling the Brazilian's tally of pole positions at the 2017 Canadian Grand Prix. Writing in a column for the BBC in 2014, Hamilton expressed his admiration for Senna and described the F1 icon as a genuine hero. He said, "Everyone loves a winner. That's just how the world is. And Ayrton Senna was one of the greatest winners this sport has ever had. But more than that, he was a genuine hero, an iconic character who inspired people from all over the world. He made a massive impression on me when I was growing up. I started watching Formula One with my dad when I was just 4 or 5 years old. I loved cars. At the time, Senna and Alain Prost were the leaders of the pack, and they immediately caught my attention. Ayrton was always very cool and composed when he was interviewed after the race. On top of that, kids are attracted to colors, and I loved the orange and white McLaren and Ayrton's yellow helmet. I started to watch him and follow his success, and as I got a bit older, I began to want to know a bit more about the guy." Highlighting what he most admired about Senna, Hamilton added, "It was the fact that Senna was just an out-and-out racer that was most important to me. I can really identify with that. It's exactly how I feel I am. That's why I feel I have had that connection with him since I was a kid. I want to race, and I feel like he was one of the only real racers I had seen." Hamilton announced earlier this year that he will join Ferrari on a multi-year contract from the F1 2025 season, ending his long and successful association with Mercedes. The 39-year-old stands as the most decorated driver in F1 history, having equaled Michael Schumacher's record of 7 world championships in 2020 before becoming the first man to surpass 100 race victories and pole positions the following year. Carlos Slim Domet, the president of key Sergio Perez sponsor Escuderia Telmex, has opened the door to a potential link-up with Williams driver Franco Colapinto. He has stressed, however, that any future deal with Colapinto will have no impact on the company's existing relationship with Perez. Colapinto has emerged as one of the unexpected stars of the F1 2024 season, having impressed since replacing Logan Sargent at Williams ahead of the Italian Grand Prix. The first Argentine F1 racer since 2001, Colapinto took just 2 races to score points with an assured 8th-place finish in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix at the notoriously challenging Baku street circuit. The 21-year-old followed that up with 10th at the United States Grand Prix earlier this month, with Colapinto earning the mid-race praise of Perez over team radio while the pair battled for position in Singapore. With doubts growing over the future of Perez, Colapinto has been linked with a surprise move to Red Bull Junior Team V-Carb for F1 2025, as Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon are already signed up to race for Williams next season. Despite signing a new 2-year contract in June, Perez could be dropped ahead of F1 2025, with Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko confirming last week that a decision on the Mexican driver's future will be made at the end of the season. Marko also confirmed Red Bull's interest in Colapinto, yet conceded that the driver's longer-term contract with Williams could prove an obstacle to signing the youngster for F1 2025. Perez has been supported by a portfolio of Mexican-based sponsors, including Telmex, since arriving on the grid with Sauber back in 2011. With Red Bull recently announcing an expanded deal with fellow telecommunications firm AT&T for F1 2025, however, it is possible that Telmex will cease direct involvement with the Milton Keynes-based outfit to avoid having two competing sponsors attached to the team. A decision is expected to be taken next month, with Slim Dummett confirming Telmex always intends to continue its sponsorship of Perez. And he has raised the prospect of adding Colapinto to the company's portfolio, having previously backed the likes of Bruno Senna, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Esteban Gutierrez in addition to Perez. Quizzed on a potential link-up with Colapinto, Slim Dummett told ESPN, "We have been with many drivers many times. We were with Bruno Senna, we were with Pietro Fittipaldi, and we were with the two Mexican drivers, with Checo and with Esteban. If there was an opportunity to talk about something with Franco, it would not be anything related to Checo. We always seek to support Latin American drivers. Franco is doing very well. But without a doubt, our important project has always been to continue building the development of Mexican drivers, and Checo, without a doubt, is the one who represents us all." Speaking during the Mexican GP weekend, Colapinto conceded that he is unlikely to find a permanent seat for F1 2025 at this late stage, but be vowed to be back on the grid in 2026 or 2027. Asked if teams are talking to him over potential openings for F1 2025, he told Sky F1, "I'm not really into it. Of course, my managers are doing an amazing job and I really trust them. But my job is driving a car quick enough and turn the wheel, and their job is to find me a seat. So they are doing a great job on that. I'm not really focused on what's happening. I don't want to put too much energy on it. I know that there are no seats left at the moment and there is no space for me to go. But I'm driving to show that I deserve a seat in Formula One and that I deserve my place here, that I came to stay and not to be only a couple of races. So I hope to be giving that impression. I'm sure I'm going to be back in the future, 26, 27. I'm sure I'm going to be back, so I'm going to work hard for that. Of course, still a couple of races left this year to show what I can do, so that's good news. But if you'd told me 2 months ago I would be here, I wouldn't believe you. I'm just enjoying this opportunity. The chance that Williams gave me is something from another planet. I'm just giving my all to give the team what they deserve." Andrew Shovlin sees the rest of F1 2024 as a good opportunity to conduct experiments for the Mercedes W16, with no more major upgrades planned for the current W15 car. Mercedes are almost certain to finish 4th in the F1 2024 Constructors' Championship, with the team trailing 3rd-placed Red Bull by 146 points and 280 ahead of 5th-placed Aston Martin, entering this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. Appearing on Mercedes' post-race debrief show, Shovlin confirmed the team intend to spend the rest of F1 2024 aiming to get a head start on next year's W16. He said, "It is certainly a good opportunity for us to do a bit more experimentation in the race weekends, but the key thing for us is making sure we have done the important bits of learning before the 2025 season. We are not bringing any more major updates to the car. It might be that we have some test items, some small bits of body work that we are looking at, but again, this would be very much in the context of learning for the future. There will be lots of opportunity to do setup work. Lots of opportunity to use the two cars to compare different approaches, and hopefully over the next few we can just add to the learning that we have already made during this season." Mercedes introduced a major upgrade package to the W15 at the recent United States Grand Prix, but an accident for George Russell in FP2 in Mexico forced him to revert to a floor specification from the Miami GP in early May as teammate Lewis Hamilton ran the updated car. Asked if the comparison between old and new was useful for Mercedes in Mexico, Shovlin said, "We have some useful data, and what we have seen from the update kit to date is it is delivering performance where we expect. In terms of the loads that we are measuring and the pressures that we are measuring on the aerodynamic surfaces, It all seems fine. What we were hoping for that we did not get to the full extent was a clean run with both cars where they were in clear air so we could see how they performed through the race. Lewis was quick off the line. He got in front of George, but he was struggling with his balance in stint 1. We corrected that for stint 2, but then he had George ahead of him who had his front wing issue because the flap had failed. The two cars spent an awful lot of the race in traffic, which does affect your analysis. But we can see from what we have collected that the kit is useful and is performing more or less as expected. But we are going to continue our learning into Brazil and hopefully get some clean laps and good running with that update kit. Zak Brown, the McLaren chief executive, has urged Max Verstappen to drive like the world champion you are after the Red Bull driver came under fire for his aggression at the Mexican Grand Prix. It comes after Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton pleaded for Verstappen to act like a world champion following a clash between the pair in Hungary earlier in the F1 2024 season. Verstappen was hit with 2 separate 10-second penalties for incidents with McLaren driver Lando Norris during the race in Mexico City. The first incident on lap 10 saw Verstappen edge Norris off the circuit as the McLaren driver tried to pass him around the outside of turn 4. The second came just a few corners later, when Verstappen launched an aggressive move down Norris's inside at the fast turn 7, with both drivers taking to the runoff area and the Red Bull rejoining ahead. Verstappen was forced to sit stationary for 20 seconds during his pit stop and ultimately came home 6th, his joint worst classified result of the F1 2024 season. Norris, meanwhile, finished second to the race-winning Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, reducing Verstappen's world championship lead to 47 points with 4 rounds remaining. Brown, whose McLaren team lead the Constructors' Championship by 29 points from Ferrari entering this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, feels Verstappen does not need to such unnecessary tactics in racing situations. And he has urged the reigning 3-time world champion to tidy up his act on track, telling Viaplay, "Max is such a great racer, I just don't think you have to drive like that. Just drive like the world champion you are. It's unnecessary, it endangers everyone, and it's not a clean race. That's why I found the penalties very appropriate. Hats off to the FIA stewards, and let's have clean and tough racing for the rest of the year." Brown's latest comments come after he declared, "Enough is enough," in the immediate aftermath off the Mexican GP, telling Sky F1 of his desire to see some good, clean racing moving forward. The McLaren boss's view was shared by Sky F1 commentator Martin Brundle, who warned that Verstappen risks harming his legacy with his dangerous driving and unsportsmanlike attitude. Brundle said, "I know that Max doesn't care what anybody thinks, but it saddens me when he drives like that. He's a multiple champion, has more driving talent in his little finger than most of us ever had, but his legacy will be tainted by this sporting attitude, and that's a shame." Verstappen's conduct previously came under scrutiny at July's Hungarian Grand Prix, where he fumed at his Red Bull team over team radio during a challenging race before colliding with Hamilton in the closing stages of the race. The Dutchman went on to tell his critics to fuck off during his post-race media duties. Speaking to media including PlanetF1.com ahead of the following round at Spa, Hamilton claimed Verstappen's behavior in Budapest was not befitting of a world champion. He said, "You have to be a team leader, a team member. Maybe not such a team leader, but just always remember you're a teammate with lots of people and you have to act like a world champion." Asked to explain what acting like a world champion entails, he laughed. "That's a good question, not like it was last weekend." Hamilton, who finished 4th in Mexico last weekend, admitted that he instinctively knew Verstappen was at the center of controversy after seeing a commotion ahead of him on track. He told media, including PlanetF1.com, "I could see a group of cars ahead and I saw a plume of smoke, of dust. And I knew it was him. I knew it must have been him. I was like, for sure that's him." Hamilton has been a vocal critic of Verstappen's aggressive driving over recent years, having clashed with the Red Bull driver on a number of occasions over the course of their title battle in 2021. Speaking after an intense race with Verstappen at the penultimate round of that season in Saudi Arabia, Hamilton described his rival as over the limit. He said, "I have raced a lot of drivers in my 28 years of racing. I have come across a lot of characters. There's a few that are over the limit, the rules don't apply. He's over the limit for sure. I have avoided collision on so many occasions with the guy. I don't mind being the one who does that because you get to live another day." Juan Pablo Montoya believes the only way Lando Norris can get Max Verstappen to change his racing approach is to crash into him. Montoya, as a driver who came into F1 during Michael Schumacher's dominance and was one of very few to show a lack of reverence for the German champion, has issued some advice to Lando Norris on how to handle Max Verstappen's approach. Verstappen's championship lead over Norris shrunk by 10 points over the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend, with the Dutch driver hit with 2 separate 10-second penalties for his driving while racing with his championship rival. Verstappen was judged to have pushed the McLaren driver off track in an incident at Turn 4, before running both out wide through Turn 7. He picked up a separate penalty for going off track and gaining an advantage by doing so. Showing increased aggression on track against his championship rival as the races tick by, Verstappen's tactics have been the hottest topic in F1 over the Americas triple header, and Colombian racer Juan Pablo Montoya said he believes the reigning world champion is taking the piss with his approach. There are so many exciting things going on, particularly the incidents involving Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, he told InstantCasino.com. I thought Lando was going to step up and take Max out. He needs to do that. The stewards had decided that after Austin they were going to be a lot more strict on Max and penalize him properly. It makes for amazing racing. I think Max takes the piss on how far he takes things. The only way to stop him is to run him over. Max needs to know that he has something to fear from Lando. When Carlos Sainz dive-bombed him, he didn't give him a fighting chance. Lando has way too much respect for him, which in itself is not a bad thing. Lando is a great guy and he just wants to race fair, but you can't if you're racing someone like Max who doesn't race fair. For us, watching it is amazing. It's terrific TV. Montoya also believes there's no reason to come down harder on Verstappen, saying that it's great to see him engage in the tactics he's employing. He knows what the rules are and he pushes them, he said. The first penalty was very clear and 100% fair. Lando was there at the apex, he had to give him room and he didn't. The second penalty? When you look at the ways the rules are written, Max never even tried making the corner. Max should have gone back to the track and let Lando by. For me, the biggest problem is why give Max a 10-second penalty when Lando got a 5-second penalty in Austin? It doesn't make sense. Juan Pablo Montoya. You can't race Max Verstappen by being respectful. Montoya, who was renowned for showing no fear for anyone he raced against in F1, said Norris's mistake in dealing with Verstappen has been his outward respect. To combat this, Montoya claimed, Norris will have to stop playing the victim and show Verstappen that he is willing to have a crash with him. It is surprising that Lando just gets out of the way. Max is the bully, he said. As a racer, it is not what you want to see, but it is a smart play. Max is more used to guys like Lewis Hamilton who wouldn't stop at taking him out. Max has two approaches. If he is desperate for pace, which the Red Bull has been, Max can try to run Lando over and crash and take the points away, or if he doesn't have the position to do that, he will just ride around and take the points. That's all he has to do. It'll be hard for Lando to win from here. And when you have a guy like Lando who is very fast and a very clean driver, you can't go trying to fight a championship against Max with Lando saying how much respect he has for him and he's the best driver in the world. You might think that, but he shouldn't be saying that publicly. I really like Lando, but he needs to speak a little less and not play the victim. You won't win by playing the victim. You might win some battles, but you are going to lose the war. We will see more fireworks in Brazil. F1 is getting so good right now. At some point, Lando needs to stand his ground and say, screw you, I can crash into you and it's okay. Verstappen's take-no-prisoners attitude may yet yield him a 4th consecutive world championship, but Montoya believes he has lost the goodwill of his gridmates and that of the media. I wasn't in the drivers' meeting afterward to know what happened, but when Max came out, he made it clear nothing was going to change from his side, Montoya said. It's a way of him telling the stewards and the FIA he doesn't care what they think. Sooner or later, however, that attitude is going to come back and bite him. Remember the last champion who threatened to quit F1 was Lewis, and that was after he had been in F1 for 5 years. He said he hated it. He wanted to give it up and become a musician. That was 10 or more years ago. Look at me, I did F1 and hated it. It was too political for me. Something Max said recently summed it all up for me. He said, I have the wrong passport. That is so true. He was alluding to the fact that the British media especially, but also the German media, controls the sport and how it is portrayed in the media. For me, it was difficult. I was Colombian, and the 2 seats I got in F1 were as replacements for British drivers. Jenson Button and David Coulthard. Some British media hated me with their guts. You could see it. That always made it hard. The other thing was, I had Ralf Schumacher as a teammate, and I was the only guy who was making his brother's life miserable. When you have mainstream media from those two countries, it makes it hard. Everything that we read is biased against Max. If you read what the Dutch press says, it will be a very different story. They'd probably be saying Lando is a wuss and should have been more aggressive. We never hear the other side of the story because we don't read the Dutch media. For the world, the Dutch media is irrelevant. That is it for this video. I'll see you around.